The Shep Naz Podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Shep Naz Podcast. I'm Joe, and I'm your host today. And we're continuing a conversation today that we started yesterday with Bryan Proseck. We found out that he is an attorney. He is a husband. He is a father. He is a published author. And beyond all that, he is a believer. And God has worked in his heart to try to address a particular need in whatever way he can. And that need is the global problem of human trafficking. And so we're going to welcome Bryan back in, and we're going to start talking about this issue and how we can get involved in helping as well. So Bryan, welcome in.
Hey, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me back.
Yes. We're both wearing the same shirts we were yesterday. And so, there's that. But yesterday, in yesterday's episode, of course, we were talking a little bit about your background, and I encourage everyone, if they didn't get a chance to listen to that, they should, because it kind of gives the context in which we're going to talk about things today, and that is that, you're just living life normal. You got a day job, you got a family, but yet somehow God started to work something in your heart. And tell us a little bit about this and how this came about in your mind that you needed to get involved.
All right. No, thanks, Joe. So as I mentioned yesterday, I'm an attorney, my regular job. And what I wanted to do was, I'm always doing pro bono work here and there, volunteering and attorney wise. But wanted to find something had a passion for that I could use my legal skills to actually help versus just volunteering, to go out and physically do something. And that in connection with, I've always again had, as I mentioned yesterday, kind of on my heart, this passion for anti-human trafficking and an effort to try to do what I could in that area. So I wanted to try to put the two together. And what started it was actually at Shepherd Naz on one of our mission Sundays, where we, in the central complex, we had a setup of all these different mission opportunities, whether it's actually going on a mission trip or doing something here. And it was found this thing through Nazarene Compassionate Ministries that they had this missionary in Moldova working on anti-human trafficking. So I actually just reached out and called him and said, hey, is there something I can do as an attorney to help with this? And they connected me with that missionary. And long story short is, he was teaching a class to Moldovan girls, like high school age girls, on just how to start their own business. In the idea of they could have some employment, and we can get into what kind of triggers trafficking and the women that get how they get lured into it. But this idea is to give them a means to make a living, so they don't get lured into trafficking. Mm-hmm. And so through Skype, weekly, I helped him teach that class, not as, obviously I don't know Moldova law, but just on how do you start a business and how do you run a business. And he and I did that together for about 2 years. So that was my initial involvement in anti-human trafficking. And then that through Nazarene Compassionate Ministries and doing that led me to other organizations, the biggest one being Freedom Business Alliance, which we'll talk more about, and then some local organizations, which I'll mention, that I started to become involved in, again, initially doing pro bono legal work.
Well, that is phenomenal. So, I mean, you just kind of took the initiative. It just started here at Shepherd, and like, you know what, I should do something, and made a phone call, and that's how that all started. Tell me a little bit, if you can, about describe the problem of human trafficking in the world today, now. What are we facing?
Right. So to put it in some numbers perspective, they estimate, or actually have statistics, that there's at any one moment, there's 50 million people enslaved in human trafficking, both sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Wow. So 50 million people, and it is a $256 billion a year industry. It's the second largest, next to counterfeiting, second largest criminal activity in the world, and it's the fastest growing. It outpaces drug trafficking, arms trafficking. So it's huge, and it's in every country and every city, even though either we don't know it or don't want to believe it.
Wow. Now, tell me, like, the different forms of how human trafficking manifests. In like, what is the trade?
Right. So it basically, there's a couple different ways. Most people, when they think of trafficking, they might think of the movie Taken with Liam Neeson, where if anyone's seen that, where his daughter gets swiped out of her apartment and then thrust away and sold into trafficking, and that happens, but that's rare. It's more psychological and a lot of coercion, deception. So it happens in underdeveloped countries. It's quite often they look for vulnerable. We'll focus on the sex trafficking, labor. That's more of what the organizations that I work with. But labor trafficking is going to work pretty much the same. But it's a promise of employment, a better life. And so they lure the women into this. They usually take them cross border somewhere else where now they have no way of getting back. And psychologically, the women are kind of stuck there. They'll eventually try to get them usually hooked on drugs. So now they're dependent. Not only I don't know how to get home, I don't know how else to make a living where I'm at. I don't know anyone here, and now I need money to get my drug fix. So it's just it's a process, and that's constantly going on, and from there they'll get sold and trafficked to wherever you hate to say wherever the buyers are. Then in like say in the United States, it's oftentimes they're looking for runaway girls, anyone with children with mental disorders. And usually again it starts young. They're looking for teenagers and so forth, and so that's kind of there's different ways, but that's kind of the process of how the traffickers get their women.
So you had mentioned, I mean, the number 50 million is just incomprehensible to think that there's that many people in the world that are enslaved in one way or another. And you had mentioned that there's several organizations that have kind of sprung up as a result of that to kind of help address this issue. So what are some of those organizations that you might be involved in or that are helping to address this?
Right. So there's different level, and there's around the world there's thousands of organizations, which is great. And there's different pieces of this. There's the prevention piece where that's kind of the Moldova situation. We're trying to prevent some from getting into trafficking. There's organizations do that. There's organizations that are the rescue. How do we get them out? Then the third level would be organizations that rehabilitate after the survivors, the trafficked rescued. Then there's kind of preventing re-trafficking, which is a huge issue because you go through that whole process, but then you throw this person back into society with no means again to make a living. So then there's kind of the post-traffic as far as like employment to try to prevent re-trafficking. Then there's also, I guess, a fifth would be like international justice missions, the example where they're trying to change laws and either go after the traffickers or change laws that are less victim oriented, so that they're not looking to prosecute prostitutes versus the traffickers that get the women into that that profession. So here locally, I work with She Has a Name's a great organization that does a lot of education, training and education to schools, churches, organizations on the issue, and a lot of connection. They connect a lot between these different facets of the organizations. Another organization, Sanctuary Night, we run actually a shelter down in the Franklinton area, which is a kind of a Columbus red light district, but a shelter for prostitutes to get them off the streets, shower, clothes, opportunity to minister to them there. These are all like Christian-led organizations. Another one then that I do a lot of work with is Freedom Business Alliance, and this is an organization that's international, worldwide. And the members of Freedom Business Alliance, these are all nonprofit, tax-exempt organizations. Freedom Business Alliance, its members are businesses around the world, in the U.S. and a lot in the Asian area, that they employ traffic survivors. So that's the employment part on preventing re-trafficking. And so Freedom Business Alliance, we provide different types of support to those businesses because these are businesses that are making, they could be making handbags, they could make jewelry, clothing, hospitality industries, a lot of bakeries, restaurants, but they're competing with other businesses that don't have this overarching employment cost and difficulty, and that they're having to rehabilitate and train traffic survivors, and they're competing against businesses that are hire you or I or anyone else. So Freedom Business Alliance trying to provide some extra support to those organizations.
We're excited about those of you interested in learning more about church membership and what that's all about. We will have a membership class Wednesday, May 29th. If you are considering coming, drop an email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know so we can get some information out to you.
It sounds to me like, and this is a good thing, that Freedom Business Alliance is actually making good on the promise that was a lie from the traffickers that got them in the first place. That in many ways, the hope of a new life, the hope of a good future, that they were tricked into thinking that they were going to get with the traffickers, that maybe that's actually obtainable as a result of the efforts of this organization. Recently, you actually had a conference, right? And tell us a little bit about that and where that took you.
Right. So that was through Freedom Business Alliance. So this was it was in Thailand, and this was our annual forum where the Freedom businesses, our member Freedom businesses will come, and there's for them there's education. It's generally the business owners, so there's education, workshops, consultations. So it gives them extra training on helping them with running their business and dealing with employees, etc. And And then another big part of that is just bringing them together so they can share stories and gain insights on issues with other freedom business owners, some of the difficulties that they're going through. My role in the conference was going back to my whole purpose of getting involved in this from the start was from the legal side. So I've been doing a lot of pro bono legal work for these different freedom businesses, because while some are in the U.S., others are in other countries, which obviously I can't work with the laws of India, but most of them, the for-profit businesses will have a nonprofit arm in the U.S. So there's a lot of legal questions on setting up governance between these different nonprofit, for-profit. There's intellectual property issues if they have some, product that they need to protect. So I'll work with those organizations. And what we did, started about a year ago, is giving all those legal issues that I was coming across. I couldn't, I'm just one person, so I can't handle them all. Plus I'm only in Ohio, one jurisdiction. So we wanted to establish what I call, and we ended up calling the Pro Bono Attorney Network, which is trying to bring together volunteer attorneys or attorneys that'll devote free time to assisting these businesses. And we started it initially around the country in the U.S. So at this forum, we launched that Pro Bono Attorney Network. And now it's, on our FBA website and nice. So forth, and kind of describe to the businesses what that is. And then I actually held consultations as part of their workshops in Thailand for the business owners if they wanted to bounce some questions around. So that was kind of my involvement in the forum.
That's phenomenal. I think it just ties in perfectly with what we've been talking in our message series recently, Shaped for Greatness, that we see how God will take our abilities, our personality, our experiences, all those things, and works them together for how you can have an impact on the kingdom for the way that God has made you. And certainly that's been an example of what's happened in your life. If you could, as we're wrapping up, could you just spend a couple of minutes telling listeners how they might be able, if this was something that triggered, just like when you were on Mission Sunday, you were kind of triggered to say, hey, I should do something. If someone's listening to this today and they would say, hey, I think I would like to get in on doing something about this problem, how could they help?
Sure. Yeah. So one right off the bat is any of these organizations I mentioned, they're nonprofit, tax exempt, so they need funding. So just financial donations, one, but two. From the Freedom Business Alliance standpoint, and I don't have this, but I'll get it to Joe. But so like some websites, if you're shopping for Christmas presents or whatever, you can buy from these businesses that are employing these traffic survivors. If you want to personally get involved, any of these organizations, especially locally, are always looking for volunteers. That she has a name. For their educational sessions, they need people to help run tables and so forth. The sanctuary nights, always looking for volunteers to assist at the shelter, prepare meals, and I can give again, Joe, he can put it in the link, like websites and phone numbers to reach those organizations. If you want to even go beyond that, the perfect place to start is with She Has a Name. They have a training session where it's a few hours, and they either do it like on a Saturday or a couple of different weeknights where they train you on, educate you on this issue and what's involved and how you can help. And at the end of that session, they try to link you up with other organizations in town that might fit your need, whether it's whether it's like a restaurant. Freedom a la carte is a freedom business here in Columbus. It's if you want to work with a restaurant, hospitality, or like the sanctuary night. So they'll help connect with those type of organizations. So that's it's a great way to start. The other, and again, I'll put this in the link, is just to keep your eyes open for any suspicious activity, and there's a national human trafficking hotline phone number. It's 888-373-7888. But again, we'll put that in the chat. Keep that in your phone, and you can call that anytime you see suspicious activity. And we could spend probably 2 more podcasts going through what is suspicious activity, where does it
Sure.
happen, where do you look for it? So it's, like I say, it's a huge issue.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing over the past couple days. And just like Bryan mentioned, we're going to put in the notes all these resources and links. And if you have trouble finding those, you can just email us at podcast@shepnaz.org, and we'll send it to you via email so that you have all those available to you. Bryan, I just really want to thank you again for joining with us today. It has been great over the past couple days to get to be able to talk to you and just show how God will use your quote-unquote everyday Christian and use all of your experiences, abilities, personality, your spiritual gifts to bring about something more than what you could just do on your own. So thank you so much, Bryan. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. If you want to keep up with things that are going on at the church, go to shepnaz.org. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For Bryan, I'm Joe. Have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.